Welcome back to the next episode of the Sunday Stache. I'm here with episode number 20, and it's been quite some time since I did one. Multitude of reasons. The first reason that I didn't do anything was because I guess it was 2 weeks ago. I had a person that I work with come in contact with somebody who was COVID positive, and I had to shift things around, and I ended up having to work the weekend, so I didn't really get an opportunity to do any research or anything like that. And in addition to that, that same weekend, my girlfriend had come to visit me, and then the following weekend, which was I think it was President's Day weekend, I had gone in to see her, and then also this past weekend, my girlfriend had actually come up to see me again, so I didn't really get an opportunity to really sit down and go through anything. So I will be doing a little bit of catching up with everything. So I don't really have a lot of topics for this week. There are a few things that I do intend on talking about. I've only got 4 of them, so as I get some news from the past couple of weeks. So that'll actually be a few different topics in there. I want to talk about international soccer, Champions League stuff. Obviously, I can't forget about Trump's impeachment trial because that all happened in the time that I was gone. And then in addition to that, there has been some recent political hypocrisy / double standards that have gone on that I do want to mention because I think that it's relevant. So anyway, we'll go start off with the first topic, the news of the week. There's a couple of different topics in here. I say of the week, but it should be the last 2 to 3 weeks. And I will end up probably picking up some of these topics and going into a little bit more depth on them, probably in some later episodes, maybe some stuff that I don't really cover, or maybe some things that, developments and stuff happen as time goes. So the first one, I'm not going to go into this one really deep because it's still a developing story. On February 1st, there was a coup that started by the military in Myanmar, I guess formerly known as Burma. I'm not exactly sure how long ago it was known as that. So anyway, Myanmar is in South Asia. It's near Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, kind of in that same general vicinity. Honestly, the reality of this is that I don't think many Americans even know about this country. One, know that it exists, or two, most Americans probably don't even care that anything is even going on over there. I think that is an important event. Anytime there's a coup happening, I think it's something to pay attention to. But like I said, that is an ongoing event, so it's not something that I'm necessarily going to cover and talk much about currently. Also on February 1st, we as the world passed 100 million vaccinations worldwide, and then on February 20th, so 20 days later, we actually passed 200 million worldwide. So I think that as the vaccine kind of rolls out and everything like that, it's starting to really ramp up in the amount of people that are getting it. Now, with that being said, and this is what I was able to find as far as country breakdown. I'm not actually going to go into the breakdown necessarily, but just for the United States, around 60 million of those have been given in the U.S. And and as I've mentioned before, and kind of just goes back to the issue with Myanmar, 60 million vaccinations have happened in the United States, and that really kind of shows you the level of care that most Americans have and about the rest of the world. We've done 60, by far, we're the highest, not the highest percentage. I think Israel might be the highest percentage. Israel and the UAE are getting up there in their percentage, but they have a low population. So it would be much easier to get a lot of the low population countries done first than these higher population countries, but predominantly higher in the United States and in the UK. So I say this only because I think far too often people in the U.S. do not one of two things, but they usually do two things. We complain about our situation in life and like how little we have, and we bitch and moan about. Obviously, right now in the U.S., everybody's bitching about $15 an hour, right? About not making enough money, about how people are making me go to work, and stuff like that. And most Americans don't really have the perspective to know that life could be, and for many people in this world, is far worse. Right? Now, the other thing we usually do is we completely forget and look past the issue or issues that are all over the world, that are happening to people everywhere else in the world. And we completely forget about those, so that we, and just basically just complain about problems that are happening in the U.S. And often there's the comment of first world problems. So, I often use the quote, I don't really care how much how my Nikes are made. I just want my Nikes to continue to cost $100 a pair. As long as they cost the same, I don't care who makes them. Obviously, that's not my personal perspective, but I feel as though many Americans probably feel that way. And that's my way of explaining how people in the U.S. realistically they don't really care about the rest of the world. And honestly, you can see that with the really kind of firsthand if you go back and you look at the way that Americans reacted to how all these the personal protective equipment for the pandemic and stuff like that, how everything was made overseas and everything like that. So it's just something to pay attention to as Americans, and understand that as bad as things could be for us, it is likely far worse for people in foreign countries, especially foreign countries in which we exploit to get items and things that are we want to keep cheap. So just something to think about. Moving on. Jeff Bezos is going to be stepping down as the CEO of Amazon. I think it's going to be later in 2021. He's going to be stepping down as the and he's going to be taking over the executive chairman of Amazon position, and he's going to pass the CEO position along to a man named Andy Jassy, who for the last he's since 97. That's how long he's been with the company. 25 years, I think it is. He has been with the company, and he has been the head of Amazon Web Services, which from what I could find comprises about 40% of all of the cloud market. So Amazon Web Services is huge. You basically can't do much on the internet today without interfacing with something that Amazon touches. For example, I think many people probably don't know that Netflix uses Amazon Web Services, as well as Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, ESPN, and that's just a few of them. I imagine that Andy Jassy will push to have Amazon as a whole continue to dominate in multiple areas, and this is not going to be the end of Jeff Bezos. He is going to continue to push Amazon to being a huge company. Moving on, February 9th, a joint WHO and China investigation into the source of the COVID-19 outbreak concluded, and I guess they have come to the determination that bats were the likely source of the virus. And I'm no scientist, and maybe since I am American, I don't really trust any of that the least little bit. Personally, I don't really trust any of the information that China puts out. That's me personally. I'm not telling anybody what to believe, but I don't personally believe them. When you censor your journalists and don't allow them to speak freely in the opposition of the government, it's not too far to think that you might take, some specific scientific reports generated and then selectively edit things or not allow certain information to get out. So one example of this kind of is Jack Ma. He is the founder of Alibaba, and he's the richest man in China. Recently, he disappeared from the public eye, and this was last year sometime, and it was because he, assumingly because he had his disappearance kind of coincided with his criticism of the financial regulators and the banks in China. So just something to think about and understand that when you do things like that, it makes it very, very difficult for outsiders to trust the government. Now, with that being said, the U.S. government also does that kind of stuff. So we're not necessarily all that much better, but in a huge, huge caveat to that, we're not, I'm not going to be sent to prison or taken to a re-education camp to be brainwashed into believing what the government wants me to believe. Now, with all of that, I am going to go on a little bit of a tangent here and give some background on what is happening over in Western China, because I think that it is important for people to know and to understand the reality of other things in this world. So for those who don't know, the Chinese government opened these things called re-education camps back around, I think it was about 2017, and it was an effort to change the political thinking of the detainees, their identities, and their religious beliefs. Initially, the Communist Chinese Party denied that the camps had existed, and once they basically had no choice but to admit they had to admit that the camps existed, and then the camps came out. They came out and actually said that the camps were specifically used for to combat terrorism, which is, obviously it's just a generic way of actually labeling a camp and justifying your actions. Anybody who's different than you is a terrorist. That's a very easy label to throw on somebody, especially if those people don't have a voice. In 2018, a German anthropologist named Adrian Zenz released a paper reporting the forced abortions and forced birth control and sterilizations that were happening in that province in Western China. Some stats that I was able to find, not necessarily from that paper, but some stats that I was able to find, is the birth rate had actually fallen in that province from to 24, or fell 24% in 2019. So that's a total of basically 1/4 of the total births had fallen. So if they had 100 births in 2018, then it was roughly 75 births in 2019. So just a perspective there. One of the more shocking statistics that I was able to find, and I wanted to make sure was noted, was currently the fact that 80% of the IUD placements took place in that particular region, the Western China region, while that region of China only takes up 1.8% of the population. Now, that's compared to 2014, where only 2.5% of the IUD placements took place in that region. And if you think about that, think about the fact that 2.5 in 2014, 2.5% of the total IUD placements in China were placed in that region. And in 5 years, that number has grown to 80%, while only 1.8% of the population is in that region. And that's, in my opinion, an alarming statistic to realize that there's something big going on there. Now, here in 2021, in January, the U.S. State Department actually declared it a genocide, and honestly, which is not enough, but it is a step in the right direction. Now, a couple of days ago, someone had asked Joe Biden about his position on any of this, and he kind of, honestly, in my opinion, he kind of sidestepped the question and tried to give his best politician non-answer, which in my opinion, I thought was absolute bullshit. and the fact that he kind of told the reporter he was just he didn't want to like step into I guess and talk to the China about any of this stuff because of they're a different culture or something else like that. And it's like you literally over here selectively placing IUD placements in one particular ethnic population in your country. The president of the United States doesn't want to say anything to China about it. And at that point, I think we kind of know who Joe Biden owes some favors to. So if he's not going to call anybody out, I kind of know where his allegiances lie. With the forced sterilizations of an ethnic or geographic region, geographic people, they're kind of flirting with some of the same human rights abuses that were forced upon the Jews during the Holocaust. Now, I'm not saying that these are the same, but if we continue to stand by and watch millions of people be detained and sterilized, how long will it be before the Chinese government starts to actually kill these people, vice allowing them to, return to society as re-educated? So just something to think about. With all of that being said, that's just one of the reasons why I don't believe China when they say they determined that this level 4 biolab is not the place that the virus came from. Then the second thing is we have the WHO. That's the second organization that released this report. That is the organization that they're supposed to be on the side of us. They're supposed to be on our side. So the World Health Organization, that's what WHO stands for. They didn't really do much in the beginning of this pandemic when they took China's word for it, when they said that it was not going to be human-to-human contact. And at the time, it was human-to-human transmission. So, when you knowingly lie to cover up things or to help out a friend or something like that, you start to lose credibility. You ruin your credibility. And the WHO isn't all bad. But their purpose is to be the early alert system for worldwide health issues. But they really messed this one up, and I feel like they have lost their credibility to determine the truth in this matter. I think that somebody else. I think there needs to be another organization to conduct an independent, legitimate independent investigation. I know that's not going to end up happening because it's China and they're not going to allow anybody else in, but there does need to be a separate organization that comes in and does this. When you hide a few things and then you get caught in a lie, do you all of a sudden become a truth teller, or maybe you have, something else to hide, and you're going to end up continuing to try to cover things up and maybe try to rebuild some of that reputation by covering up other lies, and then eventually, if you get caught in those other lies, then you lose all credibility, So it makes it really hard to trust them. The fact that the WHO could not get things right from the beginning, and the fact that China can't be trusted, leads me to distrust both of them and distrust their story that they're telling now. I have always believed that if you are open and honest about the truth, then you shouldn't have much to worry about, especially, in the beginning of this pandemic. No one knew what was going on, and doctors were still trying to figure things out. So the easiest thing that the WHO could have done is told the truth, and they didn't. In addition to all that, look at the U.S. and look at Dr. Fauci. Why is it that the U.S. is having such an issue with mask wearing? You can argue that it's because we're all stupid, and, I'm not going to end up, disputing the fact that Americans are fairly dumb, because I think that we are. But in addition to that, what feeds that stupidity? I'd say, honestly, inconsistencies with the message coming from the government. In the beginning, Dr. Fauci came out and said that masks were not needed. And then later on, he said that masks were needed. And you fast forward to now, word has gotten out
of people saying that 2 masks or maybe 3 masks are needed. So when he lied in the beginning, he ruined his credibility with the American people, especially in the fact that at that point, there was no one that knew who he was, and he basically had zero credibility with the American people to begin with. So when he lied in the beginning, he started at zero. He kind of built up some credibility, but the reality of it is that no one loves being on the camera more than Dr. Fauci loves being on the camera. In addition to that, when you have politicians making rules that they don't follow, all of those things can ruin your credibility because people stop trusting you when you have things to say. With all that, I don't trust China. I don't trust the WHO, and I firmly believe neither should the rest of the world. And they both, and honestly, Dr. Fauci, have a lot of work to do before any of us can really trust them again. Moving on from the China news, the Mars rover. This is not necessarily something I think a lot of people are actually going to care about, only because it's not really all that flashy and it doesn't have anything to do with politics. But it is fairly interesting, though. The reality is that this rover is going up to Mars, and it's looking for human life. Not human life, but organic life or something like some sort of life up there. And I've always thought, I think that it would be funny, right? Everybody's looking for this first image of the rover, and it sends a picture of it on the ground and everything like that. And it's just funny when it's, I just think about like the first picture that we get back of, this rover looking in the distance or something like that, or something's up close, and we get an image back of it like giving us the finger or something like that. I just think that would end up being hilarious. So anyway, the goal of it is to go up there and actually find maybe proof of ancient life, something like that. So the Mars rover took off from Earth in July of 2020, something that most people probably didn't even think about or know about because everybody was in lockdown at that point. And it took about 7 months worth of traveling through space to get there. The live stream actually took place this past Thursday. I think it was February 18th. And it was actually really cool to watch. Not only because you get to really, you don't really get to see it land, but you get to see the way that people react. They give you kind of the science and stuff behind it, and then you get to see the way that the people that worked on this, all the technology, right? They go over all that stuff in this, couple of hours worth of live streaming and everything like that. They go over all this, and then you get to see the reactions of the people who spent years putting this rover together. All the things that they did. This is their shot, and it lands on the surface of Mars, and then it sends a picture back. And at that point, that the rover itself is okay and that it made it there. It's wild. It's wild to think. You spend years of your life putting something together. You have one shot, and everything has to go right. And then all of a sudden, everything comes together, and everything goes perfectly. And it lands. I think it landed exactly where they wanted it to. So the rover ended up landing in the Jezero crater on February 18th at 3:55 Eastern Time. That's PM in the afternoon, and it actually has a small, like helicopter-style drone in it called Ingenuity. And I think the images from that actually will probably likely be very, very cool. It's only going to fly for like 90 seconds or something like that, but even then, it flies up, kind of gets stable, maybe takes some pictures or something, and then lands back down, and we'll see what happens with that. I look forward to seeing the images. Because I think that it's going to end up being really, really cool to see what it is that's on this planet that is so far away. And honestly, to be honest, I did not know that there were so many rovers prior to Perseverance and Curiosity. Like there was one that was up there from the 70s that's still kind of I don't think it's actually going around anymore, but like back in the 70s they ended up having a rover on Mars. So it's pretty crazy to think that the technology and stuff existed back then. And then also crazy to think how far we have come in technology today. So, honestly, go take a look, an opportunity to look at some of the pictures and stuff that Old Rovers have sent back, and do some of the research about the current Mars rover Perseverance, because it's really cool stuff. All right, and now my next topic is it's my international soccer update / Champions League, and it's pretty much all going to be Champions League stuff because there hasn't really been all that much that has happened other than the implosion of Liverpool. But aside from that, the Champions League, it's the UEFA Champions League. So UEFA stands for Union of European Football Associations, and honestly, it's one of the most prestigious competitions and / tournaments around the world. So there's a lot of different competitions that end up happening. But the Champions League, UEFA Champions League, is probably the best one. The reality of it is that the competition that the United States joins into typically isn't going to end up being all that good. The United States isn't really the best when it comes to soccer. We typically focus on other sports, football, basketball, baseball, stuff like that. So I think that if we focused on soccer, it would take some time, but we would end up developing some amazing athletes. But soccer is not where you can end up getting $340 million for a 14-year deal, like Fernando Tatis Jr. just got with the Padres. So anyway, moving on. So you got the Champions League going on, and essentially the champion from each country plus a couple of extra teams from that country, typically to play in the tournament. So what we've got is some countries end up getting 4 entries, some get 3, and some only get 2. Currently, I think it's Spain, England, Italy, and Germany that are given 4 entries. France and Portugal, I think, are the 2 that are given 3 entries. And then there's a lot that are given 2, but Russia and the Netherlands as an example of a country that ends up getting 2 entries. And realistically, all this is based on their country coefficient. So the better your as a whole your country does at the game playing in this tournament, the more your country coefficient increases. So I think right now, because Real Madrid has won. They won 17, 18, or no, they won 16, 17, and 18. They won 3 in a row. Because they won 3 in a row, their country coefficient, Spain's is near the top. Germany, I think, won last year, or not Germany, but Bayern Munich won last year, so theirs is near the top as well. It's just the further you get in the tournament, the better you do, the better your teams are, the better off your country is going to end up being, and being able to put more teams into this particular tournament. So anyway, it's played throughout the season. Basically they do regular league play, they'll do international play, and then they'll also do Champions League play. And it just happens they schedule it all throughout. I wouldn't care to be the guy that operates that schedule, but because it's probably pretty crazy. But anyway, throughout the season, and right now we're at the round of 16. It's the knockout phase right now. So this past week there were 4 matches. There's RB Leipzig, and that they lost to Liverpool 2-0. Then we have Porto and Juventus. They beat Juventus. Porto beat Juventus 2-1. Then we've got Barcelona and PSG. PSG won 4-1, and then there's Sevilla and Borussia Dortmund, which Dortmund ended up winning 3-2. Now, with those games, Liverpool beating Leipzig isn't too much of a surprise. Liverpool is a very strong team, although recently they have been honestly getting the snot beat out of them when it comes to the league play, and ever since they lost their home unbeaten streak, it hasn't really been the same. Recently, their losses have come to Brighton, who is 16th in the Premier League, and Man City, Leicester City, and then Everton. Everton is who they lost to this past weekend. Leicester City they lost to last weekend. Man City was the weekend or the week prior before that, something like that. So anyway, and those 3 teams are actually near the top of the table, but I'm not too surprised personally that Liverpool won this. They are a strong team. They just haven't really been doing all that well in league play. Moving on, Porto beating Juventus is honestly a little bit surprising to me because I think Juventus is a very strong team. And, the only thing about that is right now they're currently 4th in Serie A. So I guess maybe Juventus isn't playing as well as they had been in the past. So just something to look at. Maybe they're not going to end up making it all the way through. I didn't think that Porto was that strong of a team, but I could be wrong. Barcelona is the big surprise to me since they have always been a strong team. I know recently they have been having some issues, but I didn't personally think that PSG was all that strong of a team. And I know that they have some big names on their team like Neymar and Mbappe. They still play in the French league, which in my opinion wasn't really all that strong. And they did also play in the Champions League final last year, and they lost to Bayern Munich. I didn't really ever think that the French team or the French league was very strong. Last season was also really, really weird with all the COVID stuff and everything. So, I think a lot of teams had trouble making it to the final, and it was really whoever was going to put together the best team to do it. So prior to last year, the last time that a French team had made it to the final of the Champions League was the 2003 and 2004 season. And that was Monaco, and they lost to Porto. It's been a while since a French team had made it. Now, with all that being said, I personally, I haven't seen France, seen the French league as being a powerful league. And honestly, I had looked at the history of this a while ago, and that was kind of the thing that ended up making me determine that either one of two things was happening. Either the French league wasn't very strong, or PSG was just blowing everyone out. And the reality of it is that because PSG was blowing everybody out, and then they weren't making it very far in the Champions League, that led me to think that the league itself was not very strong. Now, if we look at last year, so the 2019-2020 season, they won by 12 points, and they had a goal differential of 51, plus 51 goals. Second place had a goal differential of plus 12. So they won by 4 games. Now, if you go and you look back in their history, so the 2018-2019 season, they won the league with 91 points and a goal differential of plus 70. Second place was 75 points and a goal differential of plus 35. So they're blowing these teams away. So they're scoring goals left and right. 2017, 2018, they won by 13 points with a goal differential of plus 79. In second place was a goal differential of plus 40. Now, the 2016, 2017 season, Monaco won, but PSG was still in second place with 89 points. The 2015, 2016 season, they won by 31 points and a goal differential of 83. In second place was a goal differential of 24. 2014, 2015 season, they ended up winning the league by 8 points, and they had a goal differential of 47, and second was 39. So I think that was actually a bit more of a competitive season, but as you can see, the last few years hasn't really been competitive. 2013, 2014, they won by 9 points with a goal differential of 61, and second place was 32. 2012 to 2013, they won by 12 points, and the goal differential was plus 46. And now second place was plus 6, and honestly, that's probably more of strategic play, because they ended up only scoring a few more goals than what were scored against them. But then the second highest goal differential from the 2012-2013 season was plus 28. So anyway, one thing I think I should mention is goal differential is it's a balance of the goals that you score against the goals that are scored against you. So, like I said, in the 2019-2020 season, they had a plus 51 goal differential, which means that they scored 51 more goals than were scored on them. Now, the real one is the 2018-2019 season when they scored 91 points and ended up getting a plus 70 goal differential. Actually, 2015-2016, 2015-2016, they won by 31 points. I think it was like 93 to 62 or something like that. It was something crazy, huge difference, and their goal differential was 83. So that's pretty huge. So anyway, it appears as though, some success has been due, at least from what I could find. Some of their success in the past was due to having Zlatan Ibrahimovic, since they did acquire him in 2012, and he left in 2016. And honestly, some of their more recent success is probably due to their acquisition of Edinson Cavani, Neymar, and Mbappe. And Mbappe is likely going to end up being the future of that team unless someone can sneak in and start and hand him a ton of money. But the reality of it is that PSG has been on this run for the last few years, and my whole point of making this, of saying all this, is mentioning the fact that PSG, all these years in a row that PSG has won the league, although it is impressive that they have won, they haven't really done all that much on the international stage. Now, personally, I watch English and Spanish soccer, so I guess maybe I would end up being a little bit more on the, I would have maybe a little bit of a bias on this, but I personally don't think that the French league is as strong when you compare them to the English and the French or the Italian and the German leagues. The rest of them are just better. When you don't play, when you don't end up having to play against a lot of really strong teams, if you're just blowing teams out, then you end up not getting better. So that's something, in my opinion, that's what tells me that PSG themselves might be a strong team, but they aren't all that strong on the international level. They're just so much further ahead of everyone else in the French league. And this is not to say that some of the teams in the French league aren't good, because I think currently PSG is, they blew out Barcelona, and PSG is currently, I think, third or fourth, I think it's fourth in League One play. So it's definitely weird. This is a weird season for everybody. West Ham United is near the top of the table in the Premier League. They're above Liverpool right now. So it's definitely a weird position for some of these teams to be in. I think Juventus is also near the bottom of their table. Not the bottom, but near the bottom. They're like fourth in their table, which is definitely far from being number one. So anyway, I'll leave all that there. I say all that honestly with all this in mind, thinking that the French league is not that competitive, knowing full well that the French team did win this most recent World Cup. I just don't think that as a whole their league is on the same level as some of the others, especially those big four that I mentioned of Italy, Germany, England, and Spain. So just something to think about. And then the last match that happened over this past Champions League. So there were 4 matches last week. And it was Sevilla against Borussia Dortmund. And anybody who's watched Dortmund play recently or within the last year, you would have seen that they have this guy named, I can't pronounce his first name, but his last name is Holland. And he's this guy, he's 6'4", he's super quick, and he's absolutely ridiculous to watch play. And a lot of people have actually been comparing him recently to Zlatan. So he'll be exciting to watch as things go, and he's basically been unstoppable recently. So if any team can shut him down, then I think that things will end up going pretty well for whoever that other team is. Although that's not to discredit anybody else on Dortmund's team, because they are still a very strong team, even if they don't have Haaland playing. Coming up this week, we have 4 more matches. So we've got Atletico Madrid, and then they're playing Chelsea. Honestly, I think that Atletico is going to win that game, and I would like to see Chelsea win because if I was going to pick a team in England that I was going to root for, it would be Chelsea. But I just think that Atletico's too strong for them, so I just think that that's what's going to end up happening. Chelsea will end up losing that game. In addition, we have Lazio and Bayern Munich, and in this match, honestly, I think that Bayern Munich is going to end up winning. They're just too powerful of a team. They won the Champions League last year. They've got Robert Lewandowski, and the guy's just everywhere. He's a maniac. He'll end up scoring a few goals in that game, I'm sure, probably 2. And another one, Atalanta and Real Madrid. Even though Real Madrid hasn't necessarily had the best of seasons, I still think that they're going to end up pulling it out, and in the end, they'll win the game. They got a lot of talent on that team. They just need to utilize the talent the right way. And then the last game is, I'm probably going to end up pronouncing this one wrong, Mönchengladbach. It's a German team. They're playing Man City. And honestly, I think what's going to end up happening is this is the end for that other team. Man City will end up running away with this one. They are a very good team, and they are very strong. They got a lot of talent. They have a good goalie, and I just don't end up thinking anyone stands a chance against them right now. If this was the Champions League final, Man City would be winning it. Or if they were going to play the Champions League final right now, I think I would probably end up picking Man City. They're just on a run. I actually do think that Man City will end up winning the Champions League final this year. I could be wrong, but I think what's going to end up happening is Man City will make it to the end. One thing to mention here is the fact that there are still no fans in these stadiums, and I don't necessarily think that there is going to be much of any home field advantage that's going to factor in on any of these things. I do think that these matches will be different if there were people that were allowed to be in the stands. Realistically, it is different when you have somebody there yelling for you and everything. So that's just something to think about. My next topic here is Trump's impeachment trial. And honestly, this one's not going to be something that I end up spending a lot of time talking about. The reality of it is that we all knew how this was going to end up going from the beginning. I knew that this was what was going to happen. If you didn't have enough senators, like the supermajority or whatever the hell it is, if you didn't have enough of them, it wasn't going to end up going well for the Democrats. So I kind of figured, and I didn't even pay attention to this because I only paid a little bit of attention. I shouldn't say I didn't pay any attention. I paid a little bit of attention to this because I figured what was going to end up happening. And I knew how people were going to vote going in. The reality of it is that every single Democrat was going to end up voting to convict Trump. And I'm sure, I mean, in the beginning, I don't remember what it was I said, but I'm pretty sure I had said that they'll probably peel away a few Republicans, some people that need to save face. But the reality of it is that that's how it was going to go from the very beginning. I understand why they want to do it. I guess it's in an effort to try to keep Trump from serving in office again. But, realistically, is he even going to be able to? I mean, he's old. He may not even be alive within the next 4 years. I think he's in his late 70s. With that being said, if he is alive, he does still have a ton of support in his current base. So just something to remember there. The results of the trial ended up being 57 guilty and 42 not guilty, which wasn't enough for for them to actually convict him. And the breakdown of that was all 48 Democrats ended up voting guilty, plus they peeled off 7 Republicans and 2 independents. Now, the 2 independents weren't peeled off from anything. They all voted guilty. Then 43 Republicans ended up voting not guilty. Like I said before, I figured that this was the direction it was going to go from the very beginning. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The increasing split of our elected representatives and their inability to work together is alarming, to say the least. We are headed down a path that we will not likely be able to save ourselves from, personally. That's what I think. I don't know what the solution is, though. This partisan bullshit is hurting our democracy and keeping the government from actually making any kind of real change and real progress. So it's pretty ridiculous what we're watching here. As you can see, some of the Republicans, 7 of them, seven of them, ended up peeling away, and they needed to make some distance between themselves and everything that happened at the Capitol, because the reality of it is that anyone who is in opposition of Trump was trying to do everything that they could to lump everyone together with the group of people that stormed the Capitol. And the reality is that the majority of people that call themselves Republican or conservative have come out in opposition of the actions that those people made at the Capitol. But the reality of it is that doesn't matter. You can come out and you can say that you disagreed with it, but no one's really going to care. Democrats are still going to do everything they can to label each and every person on the right, regardless of how far right you are, as the same kind of people that ended up storming the Capitol. If we continue down this path of left and right, or Democrat and Republican, you are guilty of the actions of all of the other people that are labeled themselves the same as you. And I'm talking about just if you say that you're left, and then someone else who is also left goes and does something crazy, you can't just lump all those people together in the same category. If we continue to do that, I see it coming to a bad conclusion eventually. It's not a good look for everybody right now. At the end of the day, Trump was acquitted, and honestly, I think that's how we all probably thought that this was going to go. From day one of his presidency, we knew it was going to be this way. The first impeachment trial was like this. The House drafted the articles and passed them along to the Senate with little to no Republican support, which realistically means that it wasn't bipartisan. Then the Senate voted basically on party lines as not guilty, which means that it still wasn't bipartisan. Then the second impeachment gained a mild amount more support from the House, because realistically I think some Republicans needed to save face, and they needed to have, maybe in a purple state or something like that, they needed to show that they were against that. They ended up peeling off and going and voting for having the articles drafted up in the House. Then that got passed to the Senate, really still not very bipartisan, and then you ended up seeing it go straight to the Senate, and what ended up happening in the Senate is still not very bipartisan. Not a single Democrat voted not guilty. I think if you had one Democrat vote not guilty, you could maybe make an argument. But you're going in with the deck stacked against you. I mean, it's the reality. Trump was going into this. Everyone knew, no matter what people said at that trial, it was not going to change the minds of a single Democrat. Not a single one of them would have changed their mind. It just wasn't going to happen. So, was it irresponsible for Trump to use the language that he did? Yeah. But was it criminal? I don't really think so. You can't really hold somebody accountable for the crazy conspiracy theories that their supporters end up coming up with. And it's a group of QAnon supporters that ended up thinking all this stuff. Something to think about. I mean, I think that this next president is not likely going to end up having a target on his back the same way. Somebody did end up drafting some impeachment articles immediately, but I think that those aren't going to end up going anywhere. Nothing's going to end up happening with those, because the reality of it is that Democrats hold the House and they hold the Senate, so they're not going to end up having a majority to be able to pass things along. The reality of it all this stuff is the words that Trump used are really no different than those words used by a lot of Democrats and stuff on a very regular basis. Many have said that terms like "fight like hell," in which the defense team ended up showing a video of Democrats saying those exact words. The reality of all this is the House and the Senate has been focused so much on this impeachment trial that they really haven't had an opportunity to go and focus on any of the promises that were made during the campaign. And instead of trying to negotiate for their plans, they have essentially left Joe Biden off over here to sit and fulfill those campaign promises that he made with executive orders. So we'll see where all that goes. Now, my last topic here is the recent hypocrisy and double standard that has popped up. Unless you've been living under a rock, one of the things that has happened this past week and has been on everyone's mind is Ted Cruz went to Cancun with his family in the midst of the Texas power outage. In case you have been living under that rock, there has been a lot of cold weather that came into Texas, and it's weather that they've never really seen before. Things started to freeze, and the fingers started to get pointed and everything like that. So conservatives started pointing their fingers at the wind turbines. Liberals started pointing their fingers at Cruz and the conservative policies. And the reality is that it's likely a combination of, all of their fault. Personally, I would not say that Cruz had anything to do with this. He is a federal representative, and other than lobbying for aid, what else is there really that he's going to end up doing? It's just not much that's going to end up happening there. I think the responsibility of this is all up to the state and local representatives, not the federal representatives. Remember what people are saying here. The government failed you, right? The government failed you. So let's try to fix that by giving the government more money, right? Is that how we're going to do it? We're going to give the government more power, more money, so that then they can come back in and try and fix the problem. That seems to be the solution that many people are looking for here. I don't think that that's the solution. I'm not a power person. I'm not a politician. I'm not any of those things. But I don't think that that is the solution. So I will say that is very hypocritical of Ted Cruz to go down to Cancun. I don't think he should have. I also don't think that he has any responsibility here. But it was a bad decision, and I think being a politician for as long as he had to have known that was going to end up happening, and he was going to end up having this bad blowback. So, with that whole thing in Texas, it's the same as the COVID-19 response, right? People are really quick to blame everything on Trump, when the reality of all of this is that there are tons and tons of representatives between Trump and the people that they have the responsibility to represent the people. And they have the responsibility to make those decisions. I hold that same perspective with Joe Biden. I don't think that Joe Biden has to do anything with all this stuff down in Texas. Maybe throw a little bit of aid that way, but other than that, maybe he doesn't necessarily need to be involved. He doesn't need to go down there. Texas has representatives. You don't need the president to come down and micromanage any of this stuff. With all of that being said, all this stuff with the COVID-19 response, all this stuff with everything, all of these things, right? All of these things. One thing that I wanted to talk about was the way that people respond to all of this stuff. And here's how laying the blame goes, right? In red states, when good things happen, it's because the people are doing things the right way. When there's bad things, right, it's Trump or the governor's fault. Obviously, they don't have Trump to blame now, so they can just blame the governor. In a blue state, good things happen. It's the governor's good choices and leadership. And when bad things happen, it's still Trump's fault. So in that situation, the government, as in the local representatives, are taking zero responsibility for any of the bad things that happen. If we look at the situation with New York, and we can see that perfectly. If something bad happens, Trump didn't give us support. If something good happened, Andrew Cuomo, greatest governor in the country, right? And that's the double standard. That's the double standard that we see pop in here, right? If you have a D after your name, then you are given a pass for any wrongdoing. And if you have an R after your name, then you're equal to the worst person in the world, right? Take the current situation with Gina Carano. Here is one other situation where there is a double standard. Right? Gina Carano is a former UFC fighter, and she is the actor that plays Cara Dune in The Mandalorian. Recently, she has been under fire from Disney and Lucasfilms because of a recent post that she made. I think it was on Instagram. And it was more of a culmination of posts and stuff that she has made that express conservative views. And she ended up getting fired for this, which I'm not really a fan of. I don't think that she should have. But I'll go ahead and this is the tweet, not the tweet, but the thing that she posted on Instagram. So she posted a picture, and it was a picture of a girl, a Jewish girl, running from Nazis, and had a comment below it that said, "Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views?" So she was fired for that. I guess that was the last straw. People know that she leans right and believes some conservative values. I don't think that she deserved to be fired for this. She's just expressing her beliefs, which is not really all that much different from a lot of people that do that online. So, and the reality of this is that it isn't even all that controversial. When you take out the aspect of it coming from someone who is viewed as being conservative, you can read that statement and think, and when you think about it, it's just a statement that makes you think. It isn't something that makes you think about being conservative or liberal or Republican or Democrat. It just makes you think about the way that you treat your neighbors and treat the people that are around you when it comes to all this stuff. The crazy part about this is that there are plenty of other people in the public eye that have either said things that are considered anti-Semitic or have had Holocaust comparisons, and they're still working. And I'll start with Gina Carano's co-star, Pedro Pascal. He posted an image of Jews during the Holocaust. So it was a picture of some Jewish people, and on that picture it said Germany 1944 on it. And then below there was a picture of children behind bars, and it had America 2018 on it. Now the funny thing is, with those kids are actually, from what I was able to find, that picture is actually Palestinian kids. So he posted that. Nothing happened to Pedro Pascal. SNL this past week made a joke about how Israel is only vaccinating the Jewish people. Nick Cannon was actually fired for saying that people without melanin are savages, but he was actually recently rehired by Viacom. Ilhan Omar, she tweeted, "It's all about the Benjamins," suggesting that Jews buy their influence with money. Deshaun Jackson made an Instagram post that was labeled as anti-Semitic. It had something to do with Louis Farrakhan, I think. And then, realistically, there are plenty of comments out there of people being called Nazis. Somebody calling somebody else a Nazi or something like that and realistically, you calling somebody a Nazi, you don't really understand. Now, most of these people don't understand the implication that they're actually making when they call someone a Nazi. They don't actually really know what a Nazi is. I mention all of these names not to drag these people's names to the mud. That's certainly not my intention. I mention them to show the fact that there are a wide range of people that make comments that can be both taken out of context as well as mean exactly what the person meant. One of the issues is when you end up having places like SNL making jokes and nothing happens to them, it displays that double standard. I don't think that any of these people should end up getting canceled. I don't think that they should get fired. But I do think that it needs to be pointed out, and that there needs to be a standard that is put out that makes sense and is easy for people to follow, right? Now, people on the left will scream and they'll say, there is an easy standard. It's don't have hate speech. But the reality is that hate speech is only defined by the people that determine what hate speech is. It's defined by the individual. I have a determination as to what my own hate speech is, as well as other people. There is no line. There is nothing that actually says what you can and can't say. And that's the thing, is that there shouldn't be the word police out here actually censoring things. Now, I do actually have one example of the real double standard happening, and in my opinion, it's pretty alarming. So anyway, this was from, so does anybody remember the Maxine Waters comment she made about Trump when she said, and this is a quote, she said, let's make sure we show up, and if you are, if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd, and you push back on them, and you tell them they are not welcome anymore, anywhere. Well, the funny thing about that is that someone was doing a little trolling and changed the name, right? They changed the name from the Trump administration to the Cuomo administration and posted that. Then people online, they went absolutely crazy. They were saying that this was way too far, and it was over the line, that they shouldn't, this was way too much. But the reality is that that's the issue, is that these were the same words. These were the same words that Maxine Waters, an elected representative from California, ended up using, right? And that's the double standard that is present within our social communication, where someone that has a D after their name can say whatever they want, and it's okay. And when someone that has an R after their name says the same thing, well, it's a problem, and then that person's going to end up getting canceled. When you set the standard that when the person making the post is supporting one particular type of ideology, you're fine with that, and they're given the pass. And then when the post is made by someone who supports a different ideology, they get canceled, and it's the same post. It displays the double standard. I don't know where this path ultimately ends out, but I don't think it's going to end well for anybody that's involved in this. In closing, I am growing more and more disappointed with the direction that the culture in America is going. We seem to be looking too hard at ways to find differences between ourselves and calling each other out on those differences, rather than coming together and talking about those differences. Where has the phrase, agree to disagree, gone? You can't really do that anymore. If you don't agree with me, I guess I'll just retweet your post, twist its meaning, and get you fired from your job. What's the difference between a person online screaming about someone's tweet they don't like and a Karen? People online are going to say things that you don't like. What do you really expect? It's the internet. It's Twitter. It's Facebook. People create accounts specifically to troll other people. The goal is to say things that piss other people off. My advice, my best advice for you, is to close the computer, turn off your phone, and go for a walk. Enjoy the outside while you have the chance. Before you know it, days and months and years can go by, and eventually you realize that you spent far too much time worrying about a social media post that in the reality means absolutely nothing. That's all I have for today. I'll be back here in a few days with another episode, and be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe.